kan chapter homeostasis yang introduction tu agak macam mana cakap, agak simple, tak perlu pemahaman yang, bukan pemahaman, tak perlu saya explain lebih-lebih. So saya rasa saya nak tunjuk saja video on homeostasis presented by Puan Hafizah. Okay, semua kena fokus lah. Sekali dengar je, saya rasa you orang boleh faham kot. It's just very light introduction on homeostasis. Semua ready Nanti bagi tahu saya boleh dengar ke tak
Okay, madam.
Okay, madam. Boleh nampak tak skrin?
Boleh.
Boleh dengar tak?
Boleh.
Boleh, okay.
Hi and good day everyone. Chapter 3, Homeostasis. In this chapter, students should be able to explain the homeostasis concept, describe the importance and mechanism of homeostatic control system, explain the negative feedback mechanism in controlling blood glucose level, explain homeostatic processes for thermoregulation involving form, function and behavior, describe the structure and functions of the kidneys, describe the formation of urine, explain the role of EDH and aldosterone in urine formation, explain the positive feedback mechanism, which is the process of uterus contraction and release of milk by oxytocin. 3.1 Definition, Importance and Mechanism of Homeostasis. So in homeostasis, any fluctuation from the normal condition is referred as stimulus. Alright, this stimulus will then be detected by the senses or the receptor and then will be sent to the integrating center. So in the integrating center is where the decision will happen. So it then activates the feedback loop, alright, and then it causes the response to happen. After that, the condition will return back to normal. Definition of homeostasis. So homeostasis comes from the Greek word which is homois, means same, and the word stasis, which means standing. Alright, so homeostasis is referred as physiological processes where organisms maintain constant and balanced physical and chemical factors within their internal environment. So physical factors involve temperature, blood pressure, and osmotic pressure. And examples of chemical factors include pH value, concentration of sugar and salt in blood, and also the tissue fluid. While the internal environment is referred as environment of surrounding cells, example, tissue fluid that envelop each cell. Organisms normally use homeostasis to maintain a steady state or internal balance regardless of external environment. That means whatever happens in the external environment doesn't influence their internal environment. Examples, human body will maintain the constant temperature at 37 degrees Celsius, although the external environment, the temperature of the external environment change. Another example is the blood pH is maintained within 0.1 pH unit of 7.4. Another example is that concentration of glucose in the bloodstream is within the range of 70 to 100 mg.
Sorry? Sorry? Tak nampak ke apa?
Bukan, mic madam tak tutup.
Oh, ya ke? Okay. Oh, gema Sekejap ya. Okay, sorry.
Milligram of glucose per 100 ml of blood. Importance of homeostasis. So organisms become less dependent on the external environment because they are able to maintain their internal temperature as example. Organisms are able to live in a wider range of habitats and then organism can adjust its metabolic rate according to its requirement. So when the temperature increases, it will change its metabolic rate. Same goes when the temperature decreases, it will then able to adjust its metabolic rate. Mechanism of homeostasis. So mechanism of homeostasis moderate changes in the internal environment. So every homeostatic control system contains the following part. The first one is the stimulus. So stimulus is the one that will detect any changes or is referred as input. All right, it will then be sensed or will be then sensed by the receptor, and then it will then the stimulus will then be sent to the integrating center where it will define any changes and will start to generate the output. And then it will then be passed to the effector or the output where it will execute the corrective action. So this is referred as feedback loop. Okay, one example is the control of the room temperature. So let's say the normal room temperature is 20 degrees Celsius or is referred as set point. So if the room temperature increases, it will cause the thermostat to turn the heater off. So when the heater turns off, it will then cause the room temperature to decrease, and then it will then return back to normal, which is 20 degrees Celsius. However, if the room temperature decreases, it will then cause the thermostat to turn the heater on. So when the heater is turns on, it will cause the room temperature to increase back, and then it will return the room temperature to normal again. So all homeostatic control processes include regulatory mechanisms that use the principle of negative feedback and positive feedback. All right, so in this slide, any fluctuation from the normal condition, whether it increases or it decreases, is referred as stimulus. So this stimulus is later be detected by the sensors or the receptor. And then this stimulus is then sent to the control center. So if, let's say, positive feedback is activated, as an example, when it increases, positive feedback is activated, it will cause the factor value increase to be accelerated. And then if, let's say, from normal condition it decreases, once positive feedback is activated, it will cause factor value decrease to be accelerated. All right. So from the control center, transmission of the nerve impulse or secretion of hormone is then be passed to the effector or the target organ. All right. So this is where the correction mechanism will be activated. So if the negative feedback mechanism is activated, from the normal condition, if it increases, when negative feedback is activated, then it will cause it to decrease again. However, from normal condition, when it decreases, if the negative feedback is activated, then it will cause to increase again. So the decrement or the increment from this normal condition will cause the normal condition to be restored again.
Okay, that is just introduction for homeostasis. Okay, so dia jaranglah nak keluar exam yang detail-detail. Selalunya bila you tengok, you faham, saya rasa you boleh jawab. Okay, selalu soalan dalam MCQ kot. Okay, cuma untuk part homeostasis ni, yang paling glamour sekali adalah kidney. Okay, kidney, start yang model, semua yang kat belakang-belakang tu, semua yang agak glamour untuk exam. Yang depan-depan ni dia just kefahaman saja. So kalau MCQ keluar, saya rasa you all boleh jawab. Okay? Boleh faham tak? Nampak tak homeostasis apa? Whatever keadaan yang dia nak balancekan balik. Daripada contoh, kalau macam temperature you 37, dia nak try to maintain 37. Kan? Kalau increase, dia decrease kan? Okay? Faham kan? Very simple kan? Semua okay kan? Okay. Okay, next saya nak tunjuk next video. Okay, so semua beri perhatian ya. Okay, sekejap ya. Boleh nampak kan?
Boleh. Madam,
Ada masalah ke? Boleh dengar?
videonya tak play lagi.
Ha? Ya ke? Tak cakap pun? Rasa saya dah play dah. Ya tak nampak eh? Oh,
Tak.
tak cakap. Saya dah play dah tadi. Okey, boleh nampak tak ni? Nampak boleh tak?
Tak.
Tak,
Dia
tak
masih
nampak eh?
sama screen.
Nampak video tadi lagi.
Ha? Peliknya. Kejap eh. Sekejap. Sekejap saya buat balik. You all tak cakap. Sekejap. Jadi nampak tak?
Nampak.
Jadi nampak?
Nampak.
Nampak.
Okey.
Ni
Kejap.
nampak.
Oh. Lepas ni beritahu awal tau. Sekejap ya.
Okay, madam.
Sorry.
Points to negative feedback mechanism. So these are the example of negative feedback mechanism. The first one is blood glucose regulation. Second one is the thermoregulation, and the third one is osmoregulation of human. So blood glucose regulation. So glucose is referred as the major fuel for cellular respiration and the key source of carbon skeleton for biosynthesis. So our source of energy comes from the glucose. All right, so blood glucose concentration is regulated by negative feedback mechanism. So normally our normal blood glucose concentration is maintained at 70 to 110 milligram per 100 ml of blood. So this relies largely on the antagonistic effect of insulin and glucagon. All right. So liver is a site for insulin and glucagon action. All right. So both glucagon and insulin are produced in the pancreas. So the one that produces glucagon is the alpha cells islets of Langerhans, while the one that produces insulin is called beta cells islets of Langerhans. So you can see here, this is the islets of Langerhans. So this is the alpha and beta cells, the cells that are actually involved with the production of insulin and glucagon. All right, mechanism of action of insulin and glucagon. So the normal blood glucose level is 70 to 100 milligram glucose per 100 ml of blood. If let's say the blood glucose level falls, just like after fasting, it will cause the alpha cells islets of Langerhans to secrete glucagon into the blood. So glucagon is then promotes the breakdown of glycogen in the liver and the release of glucose into the blood. So this conversion of glycogen into glucose is referred as glycogenolysis. So the glucagon will cause this process to increase. All right, so when this thing happens, it will cause the blood glucose level to rise. At the same time, it will also increase the conversion of amino acid and also fats to glucose. All right, so this helps to increase the blood glucose level and then it returns back to normal. However, if the blood glucose level rises, just like after eating, it will cause the beta cells islets of Langerhans to secrete insulin into the blood. So what happens is insulin will enhance the transport of glucose into body cells and it will stimulate the liver to store glucose as glycolysis. That means it will inhibit glycogenolysis. All right. And at the same time, it also inhibits the conversion of fats and also amino acid to glucose. All right, so all this action will cause the blood glucose level to fall and then return the blood glucose levels to normal again. Thermoregulation. The homeostatic process for thermoregulation involves form, function, and behavior. So it's a process by which animals maintain their
Kelas boleh dengar suara saya tak?
Madam, boleh
Boleh.
tutup mic tak sebab dia macam bergema.
Oh, okay.
Sorry madam.
body temperature within the normal range. So importance at high body temperature, all right, it will reduce the efficiency of the enzymatic reaction. So at low body temperature, it will cause the metabolic activities to slow down. So it is very important for the living organism to maintain their body temperature. Endothermy and ectothermy. Right. Heat for thermoregulation can come from either internal metabolism or external environment. All right. Ectotherms tolerate greater variation in internal temperature, while endotherms are active at a greater range of external temperature. That means ectotherms are able to change their body temperature according to the external environment, while endotherms maintain its body temperature, although their external environment, the temperature of external environment change. Endothermic animals generate heat by metabolism. So examples of endothermic animals include humans, other mammals, birds, few non-avian reptiles, fishes, and many insect species. All right, so these animals maintain their stable body temperature even in the large temperature fluctuation in the environment. As example, in the cold environment, endotherm will generate enough heat to keep its body warmer than its surrounding. While in hot environment, all right, they will have the mechanism to cool up their body, enabling them to withstand the heat loss. All right, so we can say that endothermy is more energetically expensive than ectotherm. Why? Because they need to consume more food compared to ectotherms in order to increase their metabolic reaction and in order to maintain the constant body temperature. All right, so this is one example of endotherm animals. All right, so this is the great blue heron. All right, so normally it will spread its wing in order to expose more of its body to the sun warmth. All right, so they regulate their body temperature physiologically. All right, ectothermic animals gain most of their heat from the external sources. All right, they do not generate enough heat for thermoregulation. So usually they tolerate larger fluctuation in their internal environment. So many of them will adjust their body temperature by behavioral means. That means they will have a different behavior in order to maintain this body temperature. As example, a few of the animals might be seeking out shade or basking in the sun. All right, and then ectotherms normally will consume much less food compared to the endotherm. Why? Because their heat source is largely environmental, so they doesn't depend on the metabolism of their body. All right, so from description of ectotherms and endotherms, we can refer that all ectotherms are poikilotherms, which is an animal whose body temperature varies with its environment, and all endotherms are homeotherms, which is an animal that has a relatively constant body temperature. So this is one example of ectotherm animals, which is the iguana. It increases its body temperature by sunning itself.
What would you rather do? Gain weight eating salads and tofu, or lose weight eating?
Balancing heat loss and gain. So thermoregulation depends on the animal's ability to control the exchange of heat with its environment. So normally organism will exchange heat by 4 physical processes. Number 1 is conduction. Number 2 is convection. Number 3 is radiation. Number 4 is evaporation. So conduction is referred as the direct transfer of heat between molecules of object in contact with each other. All right, as example, a lizard sits on a hot rock. All right, number 2, convection is referred as the transfer of heat by the movement of air or liquid past the face. As example, when a breeze contribute to the heat loss from a lizard dry skin. All right, number 3, radiation is the emission of electromagnetic wave by all object warmer than absolute zero. All right, as example, a lizard will absorb heat from the sun and then it will radiate a small amount of energy to the surrounding air. And then last one is evaporation. Evaporation is the removal of heat from the surface of a liquid that is losing some of its molecule as gas. All right. So as example, evaporation of water from a lizard moist surface to the environment as the cooling effect. All right, so there are 6 general adaptations to help animals thermoregulate. Number 1 is insulation. Number 2 is circulatory adaptation. Number 3, cooling by evaporative heat loss. Number 4 is behavioral responses. Number 5, adjusting metabolic heat production. Number 6 is physiological thermostat. Number 1, insulation. So major thermoregulatory adaptation in mammals and birds. So it reduces heat flow between an animal and its environment. So source of insulation, it might be fur or feathers. This can be found in most land mammals and birds. And then normally they will raise their fur or feathers due to the cold temperature. Another source of insulation is fats, all right, normally can be found in human. So we rely on fat for insulation. All right, the third source of insulation is the blubber, or is referred as layers of fat. These can be found in marine mammals, especially whales and walruses. So with this blubber, their body core temperature can be maintained at 36 to 38 degrees Celsius.
Mushaf Quran yang kita pegang ini tak.
Number 2, circulatory adaptation. So regulation of blood flow near the body surface significantly affect the thermoregulation. So many endotherms and some ectotherms can alter the amount of blood flowing between the body core and the skin via vasodilation and vasoconstriction. Another one is through counter-current exchange. In vasodilation, blood flow in the skin will increase, then facilitate the heat loss by radiation, conduction, and convection. This is due to the widening of superficial blood vessels. In vasoconstriction, blood flow in the skin will decrease, thus lowering the heat loss. This is due to the decreasing in the diameter of the superficial blood vessel. Counter-current exchange. So in many birds and mammals, so reducing heat loss from the body relies on the counter-current exchange mechanism, all right, which is the transfer of heat between the fluids that are flowing in opposite direction. All right, so the arrangement of the blood vessels allow for the counter-current exchange to occur. So in this counter-current heat exchanger, arteries and veins are located adjacent to each other. So let's say this is the artery. All right, and this is the vein. All right, so they are located adjacent to each other. So because blood flows through the arteries and veins are in opposite direction, so this arrangement will allow the heat exchange to be remarkably efficient. So warm blood passes through the artery, will transfer the heat to the colder blood in the vein. So this is the example of the counter-current heat exchanger in Canada goose and also bottlenose dolphin. So you can see here how the blood flow in artery are in opposite direction with the blood flow in vein. So you can see how the temperature of the blood in artery decreases, because normally artery will bring a warmer blood. So as it goes down, the temperature of the blood decreases because it passes the heat to a colder blood in vein. So as the blood flows in vein, all right, you can see how the temperature increases. This is due to the gaining of heat from the R3. So same thing happens in the bottlenose dolphin. Number 3, cooling by evaporative heat loss. So many types of animals, example birds and many mammals, will lose their heat through evaporation of water in sweat. So terrestrial animals lose water by evaporation from their skin and also respiratory surface. All right. So many terrestrial animals have sweat gland, all right, controlled by the nervous system. Example, panting increases the cooling effect in birds and many mammals.
Monster Math presents Addition Below 10. Okay, class, let's begin.
Number 4, behavioral responses. So both endotherms and ectotherms use their behavioral responses to control body temperature. As you can see in the picture, honeybees, normally in cold weather, they will increase the heat production by huddled together, thereby retaining the heat. While in hot weather, they will cool the hive by transporting the water. In the second picture shows the dragonfly that have the obelisk posture to minimize the amount of body surface that is exposed to the sun. Another example is frog. Normally frog will move to cool area or turn in another direction when they feel hot. Number 5, adjusting metabolic heat production. Endotherms control heat production through thermogenesis to match changing rates of heat loss. Thermogenesis is increased by the muscle activities, which refer to moving or shivering. Example, a few large reptiles will become endothermic in particular circumstances. As example, female Burmese python will maintain their body temperature roughly 6 degrees Celsius above that of the surrounding air during the egg incubation. All right, another example, flying endothermic insects such as bees and moths will have the capacity to elevate their body temperature. For non-shivering thermogenesis, it does not involve any physical action. In some mammals, certain hormones can cause mitochondria to increase their metabolic activity and produce heat. As example, some mammals have a tissue called brown fat, specialized for rapid heat production. Even we human have this brown fat around our neck. All right, together non-shivering and shivering thermogenesis enable the mammals and birds to increase their metabolic heat production by as much as 5 times to 10 times. 6, physiological thermostat. Regulation of body temperature in humans and mammals is brought about by a complex system based on feedback mechanism. So sensors for thermoregulation is concentrated in the hypothalamus, where a group of nerve cells function as a thermostat. So thermostat it will respond to the body temperature outside the normal range by activating mechanism that will promote either heat loss or gain. All right, so in this example, the normal body temperature is around 36 to 38 degrees Celsius. If the body temperature increases, such as when exercise or in a hot surrounding, thermostat in the hypothalamus will activate the cooling mechanism. So this will cause the blood vessels in the skin to dilate, capillaries fill with the warm blood, and heat radiates from the skin surface. At the same time, the sweat gland will secrete the sweat, which then evaporate and then cools down the body. So all this action will cause the body temperature to decrease and returns back to normal. However, when the body temperature decreases, like when we are in a cold surrounding, thermostat in the hypothalamus will activate the warming mechanism. So this will cause the blood vessel in the skin to constrict. So it will divert the blood from the skin to the deeper tissue and reduce the heat loss from the skin surface. So at the same time, skeletal muscle will rapidly contract and then causes to shiver, which then generate heat. So this action will cause the body temperature to increase again and returns back to normal.
Okay, kelas. So yang tu lah video yang kedua kita, last video for today. Okay, you nampak tak dekat sini apa yang you perlu kena faham? Untuk second part ni. Yang ni, yang ni pernah masuk exam. Okay, yang ni pernah masuk exam. Yang ni melibat, you kena baca sendiri sebenarnya untuk faham. Okay, sekejap mana nota. You dengar tak suara saya ni?
Dengar, madam.
Macam yang first part tadi, sekejap saya tengah buka nota. Sekejap ya. Okay, kelas. Yang ni tadi, you dah nampak dah kan, this is just introduction This is just introduction of what is homeostasis. So, jaranglah soalan nak tanya detail dekat part ni. Okay. Yang ni, you just tahu what is negative, what is positive feedback. Okay, blood glucose regulation ni pernah keluar exam. Okay, blood glucose regulation, but normally student boleh jawab sebab you tahu bila blood glucose increase, what hormone is secreted. Bila blood glucose level decrease, what hormone is secreted. And you kena tahu ni pernah keluar juga exam, glucagon produced by alpha cells and insulin produced by beta cells. Yang ni pernah keluar exam. Okay, saya takut kadang-kadang dia bagi gambar ke kan, dia tanya kan. So make sure you tengoklah gambar ni juga. Okay, and then yang ni lah, yang ni pernah keluar. Selalunya student boleh jawab. Cuma kesalahan student adalah dia suka tertukar perkataan glycogen dengan glucagon. Okay, take note. Student boleh hilang markah dekat sini bila you salah bagi dekat sini. Contoh, store it as glucagon. Glucagon is hormone, remember? Tapi student akan buat mistake ni selalu. Almost kalau ada soalan macam ni memang akan ada student yang buat silap ni. Okay, tertukar-tukar. Next, yang ni lah tadi kan. So you kena faham yang cerita ni. Okay, thermoregulation is how your body regulate, kawal atur you punya suhu. Okay, bila suhu tinggi kita cuba rendahkan kan. Sebab bila suhu tinggi, enzyme which is protein akan denatured. Bukan setakat reduce efficiency, sometimes enzyme lose function. Okay, at low body temperatures, dia nak slow down metabolic activities. Kenapa? Because enzyme become inactive. Okay, yang ni tak apa, basic concept you dah faham, no need to memorize. Cuma yang ni, I want you to understand the difference between endotherm and ectotherm. Okay, so balik, memang kat rumah dah pun. Okay, dekat rumah tu nanti you google the difference between endotherm and ectotherm. So saya nak dia dalam bentuk table. Kalau dia dalam bentuk table, you mudah faham the difference between endotherm and ectotherm. Example endotherm, we human. Okay, sebab kita manusia, suhu dalam kita stabil. Kita tak bergantung pada suhu luar. Okay, we don't depend on outside environment. Okay, temperature dekat luar. Kita tak depends on environment. Kita boleh regulate our own body temperature. Compared to ectotherm, ectotherm dia ada large, dia punya suhu badan dia berubah-ubah. Bergantung pada suhu luar. Okay, so normally kalau tengok dekat sini, ectotherm dia tolerate greater variation in internal temperature. Ialah dia boleh fluctuate kan, suhu dia naik, turun, so dia boleh tolerate. Tapi kalau kita ada suhu yang lebih stabil, fix, okay, and kita aktif dekat greater range of external temperature sebab kita tak bergantung pada suhu luar. Untuk ectotherm mungkin dia tak aktif at certain temperature kan, suhu sejuk dia buat apa, suhu panas dia buat apa. Okay, so apa yang saya nak, you boleh baca ni, tapi last kali saya nak you sediakan table the difference between ectotherm and endotherm. Ni akan bantu you jawab soalan, sebab soalan untuk jawab kalau you baca banyak-banyak agak banyak kan, so you kena simplify dalam bentuk table. Okay, tu. And then yang ni, balancing heat loss and gain. Okay, ada gambar ni kan. Gambar ni you kena faham. Pernah keluar soalan, maybe sekali dua lah, tak banyak. Okay, dia bagi situasi dan dia tanya apa situasi tu, you boleh jawab lah evaporation ke, radiation ke, convection ke, conduction. Maksudnya dia bagi situasi dan dia suruh tanya, dia tak soalan tanya macam mana haiwan tu, apa nak cakap kan, dia ni lah, dia regulate body temperature dia. So yang ni je lah, you kena faham lah what is radiation, evaporation, conduction, convection. Okay, so dekat sini kalau tengok dia dekat mana? This one. Okay, dia ada description dia lah. Direct transfer of heat by the movement of air kan. Radiation, emission of electromagnetic wave. Cukup sampai sini. Tak perlu by all objects warmer than absolute zero. Yang ni akan confusekan you. So, emission of electromagnetic wave. Dah cukup. Sampai situ pun dah okay dah. Okay, evaporation apa dia. Okay, so you kena tahu ni tau sebab boleh keluar exam. Okay. And yang ni pun mungkin akan keluar juga. Okay, so yang ni you kena faham lah macam mana how animal regulate. Okay, macam mana how animal regulate. So ni semua ciri-ciri dia lah. And then pernah keluar soalan dia bagi sama juga cerita gajah. So you kena pandai-pandai lah nak relate gajah ada apa. Mungkin gajah tu dia ada fats ke, gajah tu bila dia expose to sun dia punya body surface dia kan, dia ada large body surface, dia menyebabkan heat loss through vasodilation ke. You kena pandai nak explain benda tu. Dia tak akan bagi straightforward. Maybe dia akan bagi soalan dalam bentuk cerita. Faham semua?
Faham.
Okay, so semula macam ni, fur, feathers, you sebenarnya you dah tahu dah, bila you sejuk kita pun kan, kita punya hair dekat tangan kita kan akan raise kan. Okay, fat semua, so don't hate your fats. Okay, your fat is good for insulation. And then blubbers is layers of fat ada pada whales, selalunya ada pada whales, walruses kan, sebab tu haiwan yang kawasan sejuk tu dia ada blubber actually. Okay, yang ni konsep vasodilation, vasoconstriction, saya tahu you faham yang ni. Counter current exchange ni tak ada apa pun, cuma dia nak cakap tadi kan artery selalu dia akan carry warmer blood. As it move down dekat sini, dia akan transfer heat to vein. Okay, selalunya vein ni darah dia sejuk. Okay, so vein akan terima heat from artery. Okay, benda tu je, tak ada apa pun. Okay, yang ni lah evaporative, heat loss ni you dah tahu dah, cooling by evaporative heat loss kan, sweating, panting ni saya rasa you tahu kot. Kalau anjing kan dia suka terjelit-jelit lidah dia kan, that is panting. Okay. Behavioral responses ni cara dari segi dia behavior, kedudukan dia, frog move to cool areas, dragonfly tadi dampakkan dia straight, dia punya structure dia vertical kan, obelisk posture untuk minimize the amount of body surface exposed to the sun. Pernah keluar exam juga yang ni. Honeybees, yang ni pernah keluar exam. Saya tak ingat tahun lepas ke tahun sebelumnya. Honeybees, dia tanya macam mana honeybees regulate temperature dia, body temperature. So your inilah, in cold weather, okay, they huddle together. Dapat cakap huddle together pun dah okay dah. Huddle together to retain heat. In hot weather, apa dia buat? Dia akan cool the hive by transporting the water. Ni pernah keluar exam. Yang ni straightforward dia tanya. Okay. Okay. Yang ni adjusting metabolic heat production, contoh moving or shivering. Okay. Yang ni contoh macam kita lah, kalau kita sejuk, kita akan shiver kan. Kita akan shivering. Okay. So dia akan produce heat actually. Ni contoh je lah. Okay. Non-shivering ni dia does not involve physical action, tapi dia melibatkan mitochondria. Yang ni mungkin dia boleh tanya dalam exam juga, yang ni tak pernah tanya. Okay, dia melibatkan hormon. Okay, and then mitochondria increase their metabolic activity to produce heat. Okay, yang ni mungkin you kena faham sebab tak pernah keluar. Okay, last kali, yang ni dia ni nerve lah. Okay, concentrated in hypothalamus. So dia akan detect lah suhu badan. Okay. Okay, tak ada apa pun saya rasa. Yang ni, okay, untuk yang ini saya memang akan Google Meet dengan you all lah, saya akan explain sebab yang part kidney ni sangat penting. Almost every semester akan keluar soalan kidney. Okay, dia akan tanya kidney, part of the kidney, and then the process involve formation of urine. Okay, yang ni lebih detail lah compare dengan you belajar sekolah menengah. Okay, you kena tahu semualah Bowman capsule semua ni. You all, sekejap. Estetik, okay, you all lab dah ada ke minggu ni?
Belum.
Ketika belum minggu ni ke minggu depan? So yang ni ni lah. Okay, so yang ni nanti dia lebih complicated lah, dan macam saya cakap lah, dia sangat penting sebab dia selalu keluar masa final exam. Okay, so untuk hari ni it's like macam introduction je sebenarnya. Okay, introduction dan understanding what is homeostasis. Itu sahaja. Okay, Kelas, you all dah jawab quiz belum? Ke belum lagi?
Belum lagi.
Belum.
Okay. Take your time tapi jangan tak jawab pula. Okay? Take your time, jangan tak jawab pula. Siapa yang tak datang ni? Tak cukup lagi? Okay. Dah 9.47 dah. Ada kelas ke lepas ni?
Ada.
Okay, kejap ya. Saya ambil attendance. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you semua.